Here we are, once again, looking at animation history together. This time we're looking at the years, basically the pre-20s, and then the 20s. So right around 1915 to 1930, when things are really getting hot. We're going to take a look at sort of the explosive nature of the animation studios. There was a lot going on. A lot of people wanted to have a piece of the pie. There was a lot of great work happening, and there were also a lot of shady things going on. It was everyone just wanted to, be the next big thing, and if that meant stealing an idea or posing as somebody else to, get some insider information or copying characters and things like that. That was going on. It's quite wild. Um, our timeline, like I said, is going to be from 1910 to 1930. Really, the first thing that happens is until 1914, and I'm not saying this is the first thing that happened because obviously we know there was a lot happening before this time and like concurrently. Winsor McCay hadn't really started working on the sinking of the Lusitania at this point, right? Because the event didn't happen until 1915, and he delivered that in 1914. So we're taking a little step back just to talk about the world of the studios. So the first animation studios were established in this year, and they were by John Randolph Bray and another partner, Raoul Barr, or maybe it's Barre. I think it's Barr. These are things you just don't really know these days because there's not really a vocal representation of it. But if, like I said, my French is terrible, so it could be Barre. These guys both opened up studios, and this is out on the East Coast. This is in New York and New Jersey. And um, Bray Studios really developed. They had an office and a studio in Detroit and a few other places in the Midwest. Barr ended up joining forces with another studio down the way. So while all this production is going on, there's a lot of innovation too. And so in 1915, this animator by the name of Earl Hurd, who worked with John Randolph Bray at Bray Studios, patented the cell animation technique, which is using celluloid to draw on top of backgrounds, right? So that was pretty big, and the idea of the patent was kind of crazy too. When everyone wanting to be the next best thing, or at least to make the money, they protected everything they possibly could. So this was a unique process. It was also quite dangerous. These celluloid sheets were very flammable, made out of the same stuff that the film stock was made out of at the time. And you've probably heard about a lot of studio fires and a lot of films being lost and destroyed. It's because this stuff was, yeah, it was very flammable. Anyways, anyone who wanted to use this technique would have to pay basically to use that approach. So these guys were making money not just with their cartoons and animations, but also by kind of selling their goods. So that same year, the International Film Service was established, and this is by William Randolph Hearst. And if you are familiar at all with Hearst, complete newspaper conglomerate, mega man. Obviously, we know that animations stemmed from cartoons substantially, and a lot of cartoon work was in newspaper publication. And so Hearst saw what was going on with animation, the buzz, and basically a window for him to try to make um, even more money. And since he had a lot of money already, he was pulling good animators out of these other studios because he could pay them more. So there was a lot of sort of cross pollination through these animation studios. Oh, and interestingly enough, his International Film Service, they closed it in three years later in 1918. In 1916, Raoul Barre patented the PEG system. So the PEG system was a registration system that allowed animators to use 2 or 3 pegs, and then their cells. Well, actually, at this time, it was still just paper that he was using, but the paper would have the holes punched in them so that you could guarantee good registration, not just for drawing on onion skins, but also for filming the frames, making sure that they were always together. Before that, animators were just using basically the bottom corner of a wood jig, basically, where they would line the corner sheets up against the corner of the wood, and it was okay, but you'd have some movement throughout your filming process. So now we've got pegs. Animation's getting faster and cheaper, to do, because they're saving some time and energy with these new inventions. Then in 1917, the Fleischer brothers, Max and Dave Fleischer, patented the rotoscope machine, or, it's not really a machine. They were the machines, but it was a setup, a way to project film onto a surface frame by frame, so that the artist could reference actors, dancers, performers, whatnot, while they turned that image into a cartoon. And so we'll look at the Fleischer brothers' work with Out of the Inkwell, where Max Fleischer would film his brother Dave in a clown suit, running around, being goofy, falling, whatnot. And then he had a very steady reference to be able to draw that and turn it into a cartoon character. And this is when we started to see lots of amazing, controlled, lifelike movements because of the rotoscope process. A year later, so look at that. I mean, there's just a lot going on. Year, boom, boom, boom. 1918. Now, down in Argentina, this Italian immigrant also was in comics and illustrative work for the newspapers, got inspired by the process of animation, and started animating. He made the first feature-length animation, and it's unfortunate it didn't survive a studio fire, so we can't see it. But what is cool, and we'll do this here. We'll go cam mic screen, bam. So there are some images of his work that are that show you that he was not just drawing them frame by frame and changing the drawing. He was doing a setup very similar to what we were seeing in some of those even earlier animations, where he would move the appendages of these cutout pieces of paper. And here I think we should see there's his studio setup. So you can see all those different, oh my God, just drawers and drawers and drawers of different characters in different positions and orientations and whatnot. And then the actual animation, you can kind of get an idea of what it would look like through a different piece of his. But, cool. It looks drawn, but the way that things move, definitely you can pick up some of that stop motion cutout paper business. Okay, so everyone thought that Snow White by Disney was the first feature animation film. However, it was an Argentinian named Quirino Cristian. Okay, So then the next year, we meet Pat Sullivan and his Feline Follies, which ended up being a real big hit with the audiences because of this, not just his great style, which rubber hose animation is kind of the term that everyone uses, where characters are very like stretchy and gooey and fun. They can kind of do things unnaturally, and it's sort of, it's exaggeration of movement and whatnot. But the cat that he created, first named Thomas, the cat, later named um, um, Felix. Why was I spacing that out? Felix the cat. Okay, so 1920, all of a sudden, a book came out about the animation production process. This guy, Edwin Lutz, created this book, wrote this book called Animated Cartoons, How They're Made and Developed. So it sort of demystified the animation process, and now it was available to the public, and a lot of folks were looking as animation as a career at this point. It's kind of a dream. And this book exposed all of the secrets of the animators at this time, so that it became clear how someone could go through and do frame by frame animation. So, there were some animators who were like, "You jerk," but a lot of kids who were inspired and moved on. Margaret J. Winkler, we learn about her here in 1921. Margaret, and why is she called out? Because it's a world so dominated by men. It's wonderful to have a very significant person, this woman, come into the scene, and she worked in, I believe it was Universal Studios, doing basically office stuff, and she had a really great creative mind and a really great personality and drive and love of animation, where she ended up making a deal with John Randolph Bray and started distributing and not producing, but yeah, I guess just distributing their films, which gave them a lot more exposure. And so she ended up moving through quite a few big time animators and studios at the time, ending up representing Walt Disney down the road. So, well, at least her business did. She ended up getting, wrapped up in the world of family life, and passed the business over to her husband and her brother, and sort of, took things from the sidelines. Around 1922, we're getting this look at the first cartoon celebrity, Felix the Cat. We're looking at Felix here, but a major breakthrough in like commercialization and product sales. Felix the Cat was a phenomenon, and there were toys, there were plush animals, just you've seen it, the clocks, all kinds of really fun, cool stuff. But it's the first time we've seen an animated character take on such a public craze and love, and commercialization. In 1923, we see significant work from Walt Disney with Alice's Wonderland. So most of the animation that's been going on at this point has been in the East Coast area, so New York and New Jersey, like I had mentioned earlier, and some of the Midwest. So Walt Disney was in Kansas City, Missouri, and went to art school in Chicago, was doing some some illustrative work, but then got into filmmaking, was doing a lot of informational films, little things, little like bits that would be in between features or before, but also trying to develop some animation with his work as well. So what's significant here is obviously it's Disney, and this piece incorporated animation and live action. So he had this girl Alice, played by this young 4-year-old girl, um, filmed her and was able to superimpose the film footage with in an animated world, and they coexisted together. That had not been done yet, so that was a major breakthrough. That also was, I guess, the fuel for the fire of Disney. With that success, and he got picked up by Margaret J. Winkler. Oh, who, by the way, just went by M.J. Winkler because it was such a male-dominated world. She just didn't really want the um, the ill thoughts of maybe not wanting to work with a woman, so she just went by MJ. That's really unfortunate, but important for us to know. All right, so she helped Disney get into this whole development of a series, Alice's World, basically. Lots of different stories. These were short pieces as well, and helped propel him into the magnate that he became. He moved to Hollywood, where regular film was happening. It was the hub, but animation wasn't quite there yet, but there was room for it. So Walt Disney was the first one to move over there, and then Bray Studios moved to Hollywood, and then we know what happened from there on out. So then in 1928, there's two important things that happened. The first one was a film by Paul Terry, who had Terrytoons. And this film, Dinner Time, was the first time we saw sound on film animation. And it happened just a few months before Steamboat Willie from Walt Disney, which was, thought as the first time we've seen synchronized audio on in film or animation. So both breakthrough moments. Paul Terry did it first. Steamboat Willie and Walt Disney gets all the credit because it's the first time we see Mickey Mouse. We fall in love with Mickey Mouse. Walt Disney has now got a really great momentum and fan base. And from the 30s on, Walt Disney, really kind of swept the world off of its animated feet. And we'll look at that in our next segments. But now what I want to do is we'll take a look at these films and kind of in order. And I'll try to not talk too much, but we're going to start off with the Bray Studios, and we're going to be looking at a film called, had two names, An Artist's Life, and then The Dachshund and the Sausage. But it does show us that there's still some interaction between the animator in live action and then the animated world from there. So we'll look at this one, then we'll move on to some bar work and some work out of the Hearst Studios with Crazy Cats and Ignis Mouse. We'll look at some celluloid animation with Bobby Bumps, and then some more Terrytoons work. We'll look at some rotoscoped pieces from the Fleischer Brothers out of the Inkwell, and then we'll see the Feline Follies, where we are introduced to Felix the cat, and then we'll close out with some Disney, and I don't know, there might be some other surprises in there, but let's have a look at The Dachshund and the Sausage. So, the performer, you can't. It's the exposure is so bad, but he's got some illustrations of this dog that is next to this big filing cabinet. Um, so we'll take a look at this piece, about 4 minutes long. I want to make note that this work by Bray is unique for several reasons. There's no pegs yet; we're still on paper, but Bray figured out a process where he could take an image like the dresser of drawers and copy that over on a bunch of other sheets of paper so that all that he would have to focus on is drawing the characters, in this case, like the dog or something. So he did sort of invent this process of backgrounds that don't move, that are stationary and reproduced to save time and money and make the animated life easier the for the artist. But as you can see, like there's no pegs here, and the image is moving back and forth, and that is not because it's being drawn over again. It's just because the registration process was not awesome. And if you can't tell, the dog is finding sausages, and he's getting a larger form of himself. It was all a dream. It was all a dream. Speaking of poor exposure, something just changed in my light quality here in my office. So that was the magic moment, is that all of this stuff was happening, and he thought he was losing his mind, but he fell asleep, and his wife wakes him up, and he was like, "Oh my God, that didn't really happen. It was all a dream." But since we're the audience, we got to see that it did happen, and that's magical. I want to remind you that this is the era of the silent film. These animations did not have audio. They would go and be shown in a theater or on a Nickelodeon machine, and You either watched it silent, or if you were lucky, there would be an organ player or a piano player or an accordion player or something like that, just to provide some sound, music to it. And often those performers would see the piece in advance and have a little time to understand the storyline and when changes would be, and they might try to accentuate different things with certain keystrokes, chords, and whatnot. Just keep that in mind. We will continue.
In just a minute, I'll feature one of the famous animated Grouch Chasers. This now rare.
Okay, so here we get to see some work by Raoul Barre.
Action with Raoul Barre's animation.
Hooray!
Lucille, our
How did I not
heroine,
catch that before?
preparing to elope, receives a telegram from her boyfriend. We'll call for you today. Be ready. Have license and ring. Signed, Bob. Now she hides the wire in her comic book so Papa won't see it. He thinks Lucille is too young to consider marriage. So she turns to the comic book for consolation. And the Grouch Chaser, animated cartoons by Raoul Barre. Barre was an important pioneer in movie cartooning. Tales of Silas Buncombe. That's Silas on the stump telling a tall tale. Barre made a whole series of Grouch Chasers for Edison. Edison had produced the first animated cartoon in collaboration with New York Evening World cartoonist James Stewart Blackton back in 1906. It was called Humorous Phases of Funny Faces. But the basic idea of the animated cartoon originated with optical toys invented in Europe during the early and middle periods of the 19th century. Well, in his story, Silas Buncombe recalls he was all alone on a deserted island with just his snuff and an elephant. The elephant is crying. Silas thinks and figures, I guess the stuff will fix him up, the snuff. The very earliest cartoons were mammoth jobs, as every picture had to be drawn in detail, requiring thousands of drawings. But it was with this cartoon that Barre introduced the slash system, whereby the motionless parts of the characters were drawn once, while the moving parts were drawn on another sheet. Then the two were photographed together, one over the other, thus saving a great deal of unnecessary artwork. Well, in the story, Silas is telling his friends how the elephant sneezed so hard that Silas was blown onto the deck of a passing ship. And they don't believe him. Back to the live action. Lucille has finished Silas Buncombe's tale and decides to see if Bob is coming.
So, interesting little detail there that I forgot to mention. He says that Barre, got it, was using the slash system. It was like the tear off the slash paper system where, yeah, they would only draw on certain parts of the paper to preserve the other piece of the paper, and that's where the pegs would come in. So you could have a piece of paper that you've drawn on, it has a tear through it, and you could put it and superimpose it on top of the other drawing, so you didn't have to draw so much. That was a way for him to go around a patent that he didn't want to pay for. He's like, screw that, I'm not paying for that, I'm going to come up with my own system. So interesting to see some of these little workarounds happening. We will skip to
from the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So you can see this is a Hearst Victograph News pictorial. It is William Hearst. want to add that Hearst and his studio was the first time we've really seen mass-produced animations, and his goal was to pump out one animation every week that he would add to the newsreels that would be showing in the theaters. So like that was a lot of turnover or turnaround, I guess, and that's why he needed a lot of animators for his team, and was poaching them from the other studios because he had the money. So this animation, still at this point, is still all done on paper. And that's perfect. Good timing. We're now going to jump to this Bobby Bumps. Pause. So we're back into Bray Studios again, and this is one of the first examples of that leap forward in animation where we do see the celluloid being used. Which obviously brings in the freedom to not have to redraw your backgrounds, but your backgrounds can become a little more developed and complex. They can be more painterly, whatnot. But that the artist really just needs to work on the cell, or the animator does. That saves them, the headache of having to redo backgrounds on frames. The material, the medium, brought ink and paint into the equation as well, so you can make some areas opaque while other areas are transparent. So let's have a look at this. super cute. And you can see demonstrated here, we've got more elaborate backgrounds now. And I just love that moment when the outside of the cafe is drawn, and then the animator drops the ink, and all the texture of the bricks and whatnot come out. Super cool, really creative. And these are those innovative moments that were part of that the contagion for other artists to follow suit. From here, we're going to look at a Terry cartoon. This is not quite Terry Toons yet, but the beginning phases of it. A Cat's Life. Okay, so we are looking at the significance that Terry brought to animation, where he realized you could make a background that was really long, and it kind of was like seamless on both ends, and you could move the background every time you took a picture, but your characters could stay in the same spot. And this would allow him to, create the illusion of running through a terrain. So he'd have a run cycle with his characters, and they're just staying in one spot while that background is moving behind them. It's brilliant. So we'll see that in here. And that is why I want us to look at this film. It's wild, right? We take this for granted. We see it all the time in animations of today. But this was the first time that anyone had put those two pieces together and decided that they could, or figured out you could move the backgrounds and have that traveling happen. And it's also really great to see some of the early standards of the cat and mouse team, right? Predating Tom and Jerry, but that's where this all started, right here. That's pretty good gags, and that animation at this time was really all about the gags. Those were some good ones. Okay, yeah. Now we're diving into the work of the Fleischer brothers, Max and Dave Fleischer, and this is where we're going to see the product of their rotoscoping technique. So pay attention to the movements of Coco the clown being drawn here, and this is also just full of gags. This is the fly that keeps getting in the way of production. Okay. That's fun. It's really fun, and obviously a breakthrough in those animated movements, right? Incredible, fun to see that the rotoscope stand is he's actually working on it right there. I've never noticed that before. I've watched this a bunch of times. I'm like, well, oh, that's the whole rotoscope thing. And at certain angles, you can kind of see it, the framework of it and whatnot. Okay. Oh God, the harp music on this. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna get introduced to the very first animated frames of Felix the Cat here. So you can see that Paramount is a studio who subs, actually buys work from other studios. So this is Pat Sullivan, who also worked with Otto Messmer on these pieces, and this is the very beginnings of Felix the Cat. And if you recall, yeah, he was named Tom first. Tomcat. Makes sense. So one of the great things about Felix at this point, Tom, that allowed the audience to really connect and fall in love and adore this character was his basically his like human sense of thought. And we haven't really seen that through a lot of these other animators and studios at this point, a little bit, but Sullivan really nails this character and the persona. He ends up getting a little a little, I don't know, slutty, and he drank a lot, and so like it sort of reflected, I guess, the times or something. This character grew exponentially from here forward. Next. Okay, so we're gonna look at some more of the Paul Terry work, and he had a whole series that was the Aesop's film fables, and some of them were actually like derivatives from those fables, and some of them were sort of made up, but they all had like a moral kind of ending, but what is significant about these guys in this time is this is the film that had synchronized audio to it. It's not perfect. It was perfect. The sounds were, quiet or just a little strange sometimes, but it was locked in, and this is a breakthrough moment where sound has been married with animation. Okay, it's awesome. It's fun, and just now I love that the old timey quality of it too. Um, so same year, this is 1928. Same year, where we are introduced to. No, nope. I have these out of order. This came first. I think this came in 25. I'll have to look at the timeline again. All right, it's fine. I think we're going to end up looking at two Disney films back to back, which is great. Check this one out, though. This is where the live action meets the animated world. definitely learn those moves and pull them out at a party sometime. Fascinating combination of live action and animation. So you get why that's a breakthrough moment, right? Oh, now we're back here. Why? I guess I didn't. Well, shucks. Steamboat Willie. Yeah, Steamboat Willie. I'm gonna have to find that real quick. Okay, I found it. So it's a sound cartoon, and this came out that same year as Dinner Time, with just a different way of incorporating that audio, which became Disney's big claim to fame. So. And I'm gonna have ads. Oh, this sucks. All right, so we won't watch this whole thing either. All of these videos will be available for you to watch in full here. Obviously, major progress happening in just 10 to 15 years, and getting competitive, but also way more advanced in studio production. A lot more animators working together to accomplish more frames, more movement, more backgrounds, sound crews now, and it's quite something. And that just stop. That's fun. Just go away. Whoa! Why is it so dark? Weird. I don't know. Anyways, from the very first work with Bray Studios, all the way through now Disney and in his studios, quite a spectacle, and probably everyone knows the story from here forward. We're still going to look at it and have a lot more surprises as well. We've also really been kind of just staying in the U.S. right now. The U.S. Was kind of the jam in filmmaking and animation during this era for several reasons. World War I was happening in Europe, and that disrupted a lot of supplies and spaces available to do this sort of work. Up to then, France was the hero in filmmaking and animation work, and then it kind of like there was sort of a little bit of a break. Still some things were happening, but you know, the focus from this little moment here is really about what's happening here in the States. But we're dealing with all of these wonderful artistic immigrants from France and from Poland and from Italy and England and Germany, and they're all working together here, which is super fascinating. It's part of the magic of this wonderful free world that we live in. So I hope that was a good little journey through time. Let's just pull that timeline up again. Look at that, you know, quite a bit happening just in those 15 years. And it's nice to be able to go through and reflect on the progress, you know, the trends. You know, everyone had a freaking cat and a mouse in their animations for whatever reason. There was a dog. I liked that, and some people. All right, thanks for hanging in there, and we'll dive into some more stuff here shortly.